Bernie. They had to make him the host. But Steve Harvey found a way. Even though he wasn't talented, he still found a way.
Steve Harvey wanted Bernie Mac gone. At least that's what DL Hughley is boldly claiming, and he's standing firm on it. Yeah, this one's got people talking. Behind all those big smiles, slick suits, and that brotherhood energy from the original kings of comedy, there was apparently some serious tension brewing. DL isn't sugarcoating a thing. He's hinting that what we all thought was just friendly competition might have been something way deeper and colder. According to DL, things weren't as perfect as they looked under those stage lights. He's basically saying there was jealousy, straight up envy, coming from one direction, and all roads seem to lead back to Steve. The wild part? This isn't some new rumor. Fans have whispered about bad blood between the two legends for years, but hearing it come from another king of comedy, that's explosive. DL even went on to reflect about how much things have changed since Bernie passed, saying, "From the time Bernie passed till now, society has changed. The way people digest entertainment has changed." And he's right. The world today probably wouldn't handle Bernie's raw, unfiltered humor the same way. But back then, that's exactly what made him great. His truth-telling, that fearless attitude, that energy that could light up a whole arena, it's something we rarely see anymore. Still, if what DL is saying about Steve is true, it paints a whole different picture of what was happening behind the curtain. What looked like a brotherhood on stage might have been a silent rivalry in real life. So here's where it gets wild. Bernie Mac himself told GQ that when he landed the role in Ocean's 11, Steve Harvey actually called up the producers behind his back. Bernie claimed Steve tried to convince them that he would be a better fit for the role, basically trying to snatch the part right out from under him. Can you believe that? Bernie was furious, saying that was the kind of move you just don't pull. Not when you're supposed to be brothers, not when you've built something legendary together. This wasn't just some small misunderstanding either. This was deep. That single phone call exposed cracks in what everyone thought was an unbreakable bond between comedy giants. According to DL Hughley, that moment showed the truth.
Is it true that Steve and Bernie butted heads?
Yeah. I mean, you know, they were the kind of guys that they both alpha male.
That the so-called brotherhood behind the original kings of comedy wasn't really brotherhood at all. It was competition disguised as camaraderie, ego mixed with ambition, jealousy hidden behind smiles and suits. And when you think about it, it kind of makes sense. These men were at the top of their game, sold out arenas, Hollywood knocking on their doors, so maybe that hunger for success turned into something darker. DL's words cut deep because they suggest that what fans saw on stage, laughter, chemistry, brotherhood, might have just been a perfectly performed act, while behind the scenes, it was a silent battle for power and recognition. And now, decades later, DL Hughley is pulling the curtain all the way back. No filters, no holding back. He's saying out loud what people have been whispering about for years. According to him, Steve Harvey, the man who branded himself as the smooth-talking leader of the original kings of comedy, wasn't just in friendly competition with Bernie Mac. He allegedly wanted him gone. That's a heavy accusation, especially considering how tight the group once seemed. DL is basically confirming the rumors that Steve didn't just want to share the spotlight, he wanted to own it. The same guy who smiled next to Bernie on stage and called him brother might have secretly been plotting to push him out of the picture altogether. Fans are stunned because this changes everything about how people saw that brotherhood. What once looked like unity and mutual respect might have been tension wrapped in showbiz polish. It's crazy to think that behind the jokes, the laughter, and the history they made together, there could have been this quiet, ruthless rivalry brewing the entire time. Let's get right into it. No sugarcoating, no pretending. To the public, the original kings of comedy looked untouchable, like a dream team built to make history. Four legends, Steve Harvey, Cedric the Entertainer, DL Hughley, and Bernie Mac, all on one stage, all bringing fire. They were unstoppable, feeding off each other's energy, selling out arenas, rewriting comedy history one joke at a time. But behind that laughter and those shiny suits, something wasn't sitting right. Because if you talk to the people who were really around back then, they'll tell you Bernie Mac wasn't cut from the same cloth as the rest. He wasn't about that Hollywood act. He wasn't chasing politics or playing nice to climb higher. Bernie was straight up raw, real, and street. A man who didn't need validation from anyone to know he was great.
Steve was hot. We had the Steve Harvey Show, so we had a national TV show. Bernie Mac was the it comedian at the time, and then DL was hot. He had a TV show.
His comedy wasn't just jokes. It was truth wrapped in laughter, and audiences felt that. But here's where things get messy. That rawness, that authenticity, That fearless energy, some say it made certain people uncomfortable. And word is Steve Harvey couldn't handle it. People close to the scene claim Steve didn't like how Bernie could walk into any room, own it, and have the crowd screaming without even trying. They say Steve wanted control, wanted to be the face, the front man, the king among kings, and Bernie's realness was a threat to that. What looked like brotherhood on stage might have been a silent rivalry burning underneath every single punchline. The night before they'd hit the stage on the Kings of Comedy tour, Bernie Mac had this little ritual. He'd pat the guys on the back or tap them on the rear like a teammate before a big game. He was athletic, full of energy, always setting the tone. That's how it all started. Brotherhood, hype, good vibes. But once the tour blew up in the late 90s, things started shifting fast. Every city was packed to the roof, every ticket sold out, the lights brighter than ever, and black excellence was front and center. 4 kings running the stage like royalty. But even kings, it turns out, can get jealous. DL Hughley spilled that the energy behind the scenes wasn't what the fans imagined.
Is that one of the reasons why you didn't do? You did the first part, and then the second part.
I think, of course, that was, definitely a contributing circumstance.
On stage, it looked like love, but backstage, it was tension. According to DL, Steve Harvey was always trying to play frontman. He wanted to be the leader, the spokesman, the one the media ran to. He insisted on introducing the show, taking interviews, and presenting himself as the mastermind behind the tour. Meanwhile, Bernie Mac, he was the people's champ, the one everybody came to see. The moment Bernie hit the stage, the crowd went crazy. He didn't just tell jokes, he owned the night. People would be laughing so hard they'd cry, then end up on their feet, chanting his name like it was a victory march. Bernie, Bernie, Bernie. He wasn't polished like Steve, but that's what made him real. Raw, fearless, and straight from the heart. And according to DL, that's exactly when Steve started to change. Because Steve Harvey is a man built on pride, sharp suits, sharp words, sharp ego. He likes being in control, being the name everyone talks about. So watching Bernie steal the spotlight night after night, that didn't sit well. Steve wanted to be the boss, but Bernie was becoming the legend, and the crowd had already chosen their king. And make no mistake, when that spotlight hit, Bernie Mac was the boss on that stage. He owned it like nobody else could. According to DL Hughley, the tension was there from day one. Steve wanted the show run a certain way, clean, tight, polished, every move planned out like a business meeting. But Bernie, he was the total opposite. Wild, unpredictable, raw, a man who didn't care about fitting into Hollywood's fake little box. He wasn't about playing politics or flattering the right people to move up. Bernie spoke from the soul, and that kind of realness, it shakes people who rely on control to keep their image together. So when Bernie started winning over the crowd, when fans were screaming his name louder than Steve's, that's when things reportedly turned cold. According to DL, Steve didn't like watching that spotlight shift. Bernie was becoming the people's favorite, and that stung. And that's when, as DL puts it, Steve allegedly started making moves. DL describes Steve as the type who will flash you that big friendly smile in public, talk brotherhood and unity on camera. But behind the scenes, he's the kind of man who quietly rearranges the stage.
Because, like, y'all would be together if it wasn't for me. Like, okay, bruh. Like, nobody
you ain't told her one joke.
Nobody coming to see you.
Making sure the spotlight stays on him. He'll shake your hand before the show and move you out of the way right after it's done. And the way DL tells it, Steve didn't just want Bernie out of the spotlight, he wanted him off the tour. Yeah, it gets that deep. During the peak of the Kings of Comedy craze, when tickets were selling out everywhere and money was rolling in like water, the behind-the-scenes drama was heating up. Talks started about contracts, pay splits, and who would headline in which city, and that's when everything started turning ugly. According to DL, Bernie found out some shady moves were happening behind closed doors. He was being undercut, straight up. Deals were reportedly getting made without his input, even though he was the one shutting down every show. Meanwhile, Steve Harvey was allegedly positioning himself as the face of the whole operation, the spokesperson, the man doing all the interviews, handling the press, smiling for every camera. But the crazy part, Bernie was the one fans came to see. He was closing every show, tearing the roof off night after night, yet somehow he was the one being pushed to the background. And Bernie wasn't the type to bite his tongue. Not for anybody. He called it like he saw it, loud and clear. He told people straight up, they don't want me here, but the people do. That one line said it all. He knew there were folks trying to edge him out, but he also knew the fans had his back every step of the way. DL Hughley said he saw it all with his own eyes. Bernie Mac sitting in that dressing room, quiet, frustrated, looking like an outsider in the very empire he helped build. Imagine that, the man who had the crowd screaming his name every night, feeling isolated in his own success. Cedric the Entertainer tried to play peacemaker, trying to hold the group together, but according to DL, Steve didn't seem bothered. His eyes were already on a bigger prize. Hollywood, TV, radio, talk shows, red carpets, the whole empire. Bernie, he wasn't chasing that. He was about the stage, the crowd, the laughter, the art. Two men, two different dreams, and completely different morals. One was driven by control and image, the other by truth and connection. And when egos like that clash at the top, something always breaks. Then came the turning point. When the original Kings of Comedy movie dropped in 2000, it was Bernie's moment. His set in that film was pure gold, the kind of performance that turns a comedian into a legend overnight. His "I ain't scared of you, mother" bit became part of comedy history. Audiences were obsessed. Bernie wasn't just funny, he was unforgettable. After that, his career took off like a rocket. Hollywood came calling, not for Steve, but for Bernie. The Bernie Mac Show hit Fox and blew up instantly. Smart, hilarious, and real. It was a sitcom with heart, pulling massive ratings and connecting with people on a deeper level. Fans loved Bernie because he felt authentic. A family man who never lost his edge, who made you laugh and made you think at the same time. And according to DL, that's when Steve really started to feel the heat. He reportedly didn't like watching Bernie become the face of comedy, especially since Steve had always been seen as the clean one, the Hollywood-friendly guy, the crossover success story. No compromise, no fake smiles, no pandering. That was Bernie Mac all day long. And DL Hughley once told a story that really exposes just how deep the tension ran between him and Steve. He said that during one of their shows on the Kings of Comedy tour, Steve actually tried to have Bernie's mic time cut short, claiming Bernie was running too long and messing up the flow of the night. But according to DL, that wasn't the real reason at all. The truth? Bernie was killing it out there, too hard. The audience couldn't get enough of him. Every punchline hit, every story landed, and the crowd went wild like they were at a concert instead of a comedy show. And that kind of energy, it's hard to follow. DL said it straight. Steve hated going on stage after Bernie because he knew there was no topping that. Bernie's presence was electric. He didn't just perform, he owned the room. Like the stage itself belonged to him. Nobody wanted to follow Bernie because once he touched that mic, the show was done. He was one of one, a once-in-a-generation kind of funny that couldn't be taught or copied. Now, DL made it clear, he's not saying Steve ever wished anything bad on Bernie. But what he is saying, that Steve didn't exactly lose sleep when Bernie's stars started to fade. DL claims Steve wanted to be the last man standing, the face of the Kings of Comedy, the one name everyone would remember. And in a strange way, that's how it played out. He became America's TV uncle. Smooth, smiling, suited up, always ready with a life lesson or a laugh. Steve Harvey built an empire out of charm and hustle. But even with all that success, there's always been a shadow following him. A quiet question lingering behind every accomplishment. Did he get there clean? Years later, DL Hughley finally broke his silence, and what he said reopened old wounds. In an interview, he dropped a line that made everyone pause. Bernie was the realest one out of all of us. He didn't play the game, and that's why the game played him. A lot of folks didn't want him around because he didn't bow down. That right there hit like a punch. And when DL was asked straight up if he thought Steve was jealous of Bernie, he paused for a second and said, "Let's just say Steve wanted to be the only king." That one sentence flipped the internet upside down. Fans who'd been whispering for years suddenly felt validated. The tension, the quiet competition, the politics behind the laughter. It was all real. People started revisiting interviews, watching old clips, pointing out body language and subtle digs that suddenly looked a lot less friendly. The so-called brotherhood of the Kings of Comedy was starting to look more like a battlefield of egos. Now, to be fair, Steve Harvey has denied all of it. He said publicly more than once that he loved Bernie Mac like a brother. He's insisted they never had beef and that people just love to stir up drama for clicks. Steve's even teared up in interviews talking about Bernie's passing, saying he misses him deeply and that their bond was real. But folks who knew both men still say the energy didn't lie. And sometimes when realness meets ambition, it turns into friction. DL said something powerful about that. Bernie was pure, too pure for Hollywood. And in a world full of fakes, purity gets punished. That line hits deep because Bernie wasn't built for the Hollywood machine. He was blue-collar funny, forged in the clubs, through struggle, through pain. He didn't care about playing nice. He cared about telling the truth. And that truth made him a legend, but it also made him a threat to people who built their image on being polished, safe, and perfect. After Bernie's passing, DL says Steve started rewriting the story, suddenly calling Bernie his brother, saying they were close. But DL hinted that wasn't the full truth. He said, "It's funny how people cry over you after you're gone, but they couldn't pick up the phone when you were alive." The wild part? Even years later, fans still pick sides. Some say DL's just being messy, stirring the pot for clicks. Others say he's finally telling the truth, the kind that's been buried under fame and fake smiles. But one thing's for sure, you can't tell the story of black comedy without telling the story of ego. Because when money, fame, and power mix, even brothers start to see each other as competition. DL said something else that cut deep. He said, Steve wanted to be the face of the Kings. Bernie wanted to be the soul. And in the end, the face survived, but the soul died. That's haunting, because when you really think about it, he's not wrong. Steve Harvey is still everywhere, hosting, speaking, inspiring, but Bernie Mac, he's gone. Yet somehow, he's still felt in every club, every mic, every room where real comedy lived. Because in Hollywood, authenticity is dangerous. And Bernie Mac was too authentic for the game. And that's exactly what made him immortal. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think DL's telling the truth, or is he just stirring old ghosts? If you felt this one, hit that like button and share it with someone who remembers the real Bernie, and subscribe for more untold stories, raw truths, and deep dives the industry doesn't want you to hear.